Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are unpacking one of the most, singular towering figures in 20th century entertainment history.
He really was.
And if you were in Britain, or really anywhere that appreciated a kind of controlled anarchy in the mid to late 20th century, you know this image instantly.
Absolutely.
A giant of a man, often just drenched in sweat under the stage lights, that eternal, floppy red fez perched precariously on top of his head, props shattering around him, and of course the ultimate perfect signature of chaos.
Just like that.
Exactly.
We are, of course, talking about Thomas Frederick Cooper. He is perhaps the most loved and certainly one of the most enduringly imitated comedians in British show business history.
It's true. You see that red hat, you hear those three words, and you know instantly who it is. It doesn't matter what generation you grew up in.
Not at all.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to move far beyond the silly props and that famous hat to really understand the deep, almost religious dedication he had to his craft.
Right.
We're going beneath the surface to explore the rigorous skill, the lifelong consuming obsession with magic, and the deeply complex, often troubled character that lay behind that facade of buffoonery.
And our source material for this is just invaluable. It comes largely from a definitive, comprehensive biography, and it was written by a producer who worked closely with him for years.
So we're getting an inside look.
A real inside look. This gives us intimate access to recollections from colleagues, from family, industry insiders. It lets us connect that hilarious stage persona directly to the private, deeply human man.
Okay. So what we're really hunting for here is the absolute method in the madness.
Exactly. The deliberate architecture of failure.
It's so essential as we dive into this material for you to realize that everything Cooper presented as accidental, as a genuine mistake made in the moment, was often the result of decades of dedicated practice.
It was performance.
It's the ultimate high-wire act he performed. He mastered the art of failing convincingly.
So the discussion, it really has to begin with a fundamental contradiction at the very heart of Cooper's appeal.
Right.
The sources, they paint this picture of a performer who is constantly, and I mean constantly, operating against expectation in every way imaginable.
Okay, let's unpack that. Core cognitive dissonance. He became the global epitome of bumbling ineptitude, right? Comedy gold created through guaranteed failure and demolition.
Yes.
But the sources are absolutely insistent. He possessed precision and technique to die for. He was, in fact, an immensely skilled sleight-of-hand artist.
Precisely. The entire 40-year career was built on these incredible paradoxes. He was primarily a magician. That was his foundational identity, the skill he cherished most.
The thing he loved.
The thing he loved. Yet he exploited the comedy of failure with what the source describes as utter confidence.
So there was never a moment of doubt that he was in charge of the failure.
Never. The audience always felt safe because he was so in command of his own chaos.
And the material, it notes another massive contradiction. He was seen as the most original, funny man of his generation, the first of his kind.
Really?
Truly unique. Yet he rarely, if ever, used original gambits in his repertoire. He almost exclusively exploited very old tricks, ancient gags, and well-worn jokes.
And he transformed them.
Purely through his unique delivery.
That transformation is the key. I mean, he could take a joke that died for every other comic on the circuit and just make it his own, simply through the timing of a grimace or, the length of a pause.
And physically, there was a great contradiction, too, wasn't there?
The huge one. He was a giant of a man, over 6 feet 3 inches tall, a child in a massive body who, despite his size and all that perceived clumsiness, exhibited a startling light-footedness of Fred Astaire.
I find that comparison fascinating, that lightness, almost a balletic quality. It made his crashes and his clumsiness so much funnier.
It did.
It wasn't just a big man falling over. It was an elegantly timed, massive man achieving chaos. It was controlled anarchy.
And his genius lay in manipulating the audience's expectation. While he exuded this good cheer on stage, his colleagues often noted that off stage, he was happiest when he was just absorbed in his own private world of sleight of hand.
But the fascinating thing the sources reveal is just how narrow the difference was between the stage self and the private self.
Almost indistinguishable at times.
That continuity is where the real personality shines through. One of the sources, the producer, he recalls first seeing Cooper on TV from a pier in Great Yarmouth in the late 50s.
Okay.
And he observed that while other comedians made comedy a direct challenge with the audience, go on, laugh, I dare you.
Right, that confrontational style.
Cooper made it a game. He communicated sheer delight through the veil of his own frustration. He wasn't challenging you to laugh, he was inviting you into his bewildered world as a co-conspirator.
And that offstage persona was just a constant source of humor. There's this anecdote from a magician's convention in Eastbourne in the early 60s that captures this perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
The expert notes sitting in the audience when Cooper decided to clamber past rows of seated people to get to his seat.
Okay, I can picture this.
This was unintentional comic chaos at its purest.
Tell us what he was carrying. I feel like the image is crucial here.
So he was juggling a cup and saucer in one hand, a glass of something much stronger in the other, a folded convention program tucked under his armpit, a newspaper under the other arm, and smoking a cigar.
Wait, all at the same time.
All at the same time,
Yeah.
all while navigating the tightly packed knees of the audience.
That's an impossible physical challenge for someone who's trying to be careful. Did he drop anything?
Not a single thing.
Yeah.
At no point did he ask for help. And crucially, at no point was a single drop of liquid spilt.
Wow.
This wasn't an act. It was just how Tommy Cooper operated in the real world. The producer concluded that his stage persona was indistinguishable from his offstage presence, and that being near him was simply a tonic.
He was just inherently spontaneously funny, whether he was trying to be or not.
Exactly. Because his coordination was somehow simultaneously precise and chaotic.
And that blend of effortlessness and spontaneous hilarity is what turned him into an enduring brand, right? Built around two absolutely inseparable tokens of his identity. First, the catchphrase, just like that.
The sources call it the perfect verbal trademark for a comedy exponent of a demonstrative art like magic.
I mean, think about its utility. It's the verbal flourish for when a trick should have worked magically. No, it didn't. It's the instant recognition of the trick's failure.
And it endured so powerfully that 20 years after his death, it was voted the second most popular catchphrase in British comedy history. It long outlasted phrases that were contemporary and topical.
And here's where the enduring power of that phrase becomes almost surreal. The sources note that Margaret Thatcher, of all people,
The Iron Lady.
the Iron Lady, she required lessons in the correct intonation from her speechwriter just to use it effectively in a speech.
That's incredible.
The power of that phrase was so ingrained in the national psyche that even politicians needed vocal training to invoke the correct, baffled Cooper spirit.
And that leads us to the other token, doesn't it? The famous beckoning fez.
The fez.
It became an instant token of fun and frivolity, and its use in political satire is a testament to its cultural reach. Cartoonists often use the image of a befezed politician wielding a broken wand whenever disaster struck or, an error of judgment was made.
It instantly signified chaotic, high-level incompetence.
Yes.
I love the origin story of the fez, though, because it perfectly captures that blend of the accidental and the legend.
It really does. He was serving in Egypt during the war, entertaining troops at an army concert party show at the RAF Heliopolis YMCA.
Right.
And he forgot his pith helmet, a crucial element of his performance uniform at the time, and just on impulse, he pinched a fez from a passing waiter.
And the effect was immediate.
It was. It added inches to his already towering height and gave him that unique silhouette, that distinct visual stamp.
But the twist on the catchphrase is just marvelous. He later went back to Cairo with his wife, Gwen, and tried one on in the market, purely for nostalgia.
And the seller turned to him and said, "Just like that."
Exactly. And when Cooper proudly explained that it was his catchphrase, the seller was just genuinely confused.
Right, because he said every English person who tries on a fez turns to their friends and says, "Just like that."
It's perfect. The universe was telling him that the great original Tommy Cooper had simply stumbled upon an existing cultural phenomenon and adopted it.
He was so intrinsically linked to the phrase, he was surprised to find others had been using it in that exact context all along.
It's a perfect meta-commentary on his entire career, isn't it? Taking something old and making it intrinsically, magically his. To really understand why he centered his comedy on failure, though, we have to look closely at the adversity that stamped his early life. Thomas Frederick Cooper was born in 1921.
Though he often shaved a year off, claiming 1922.
Right. And the sources note he cheated death right from the start.
His birth was genuinely harrowing. The sources detail a difficult premature arrival, where the midwife, and I'm quoting here, gave me up for a weakling and just slung him to the bottom of the bed, believing he wouldn't survive.
Wow. So they'd just given up on him.
Completely. It was his mother, Gertrude, who kept him alive. She was administering drops of brandy and condensed milk around the clock.
So he came into the world literally fighting for his life. That gives a really poignant dimension to his later rumination that he could already see life wasn't easy.
It does, and this precarious start was mirrored in the family's financial situation. His father, Thomas Samuel Cooper, was a former coal miner, invalided out of WWI.
Right, he was either gassed at the sum or suffered lung issues from unloading petrol cans.
And crucially, his father had a chronic, devastating gambling habit.
Ah.
And that habit led to the most defining trauma of Cooper's childhood. They lost their house. This financial instability created a powerful defining trait in young Tommy through his mother. Gertrude was the strong-minded one, the one with the business sense, who held the family together through dressmaking and later running a shop in Southampton.
She fought tooth and nail against poverty, and in doing so, she instilled a lasting, deeply rooted, and eventually even paranoiac sense of thrift in young Tommy.
It really was paranoid. This wasn't just being careful. This was a deep-seated financial anxiety.
And that manifested in those small, paranoid ways we see later in his life.
Absolutely. For example, his mother insisted that any money he carried for errands, even just a few shillings, be distributed among various pockets, or even sewn into his clothes just in case he lost some of it.
So the idea that money was something you had to hide and guard obsessively, that would resurface throughout his life.
Even at the very pinnacle of his success, the financial instability of his early life just never, ever left him.
And academically, the sources confirm he was a non-starter. Peter North recalls him being an academic non-starter at school.
Right.
He was physically big, but often reclusive, lonely, and frequently the butt of jokes, a classic outsider.
And this is the vital connection. Magic provided his essential ticket to a form of social acceptance.
Ah!
When he was just a kid in the playground, it was the conjuring tricks that made the other kids gather around him. He later admitted that it was only when he started conjuring that the other kids actually noticed him.
So the desire to perform and to control attention was born out of social necessity and loneliness.
Exactly. And the sources note that even in his earliest magical attempts, he was prone to rushing tricks before fully mastering them, like the egg, cup, and ball trick, which caused the kids to laugh.
Right.
Peter North, his contemporary, felt that the teenage Tommy might not have been bright enough at that age to appreciate that he was being laughed at rather than with.
So he just laughed it off because any attention was better than none.
Pretty much. Yet, despite this seeming naivety, he was already the high panjandrum of practical jokes. He was using elaborate mail-order gags.
Like spring snakes, sneezing powder.
Yeah, and carefully staged gags, always controlling the chaos.
The details of those practical jokes are brilliant. The anecdote about the imitation chocolate bar, which he'd connect to an invisible thread in the playground and jerk away just as a kid reached for it.
The level of stage management was already there.
It was. And even more surreal is Roy Storr's recollection of Tommy riding his bike down Hampton Lane, appearing completely absorbed in a newspaper held in both hands.
Right, and only upon closer inspection did Storer realize Tommy had meticulously cut holes in the paper to steer.
That just confirms the surreal, physical sense of humor was innate and fully developed. He was already creating theater out of everyday life.
And this all builds to the true catalyst moment, the moment the ineptitude was codified. His first professional employment was an apprenticeship at the British Powerboat Company.
Though his obsession with magic soon distracted him from any serious work.
Of course. And the pivotal anecdote details a scene in the canteen. Tommy had been designated tea boy for 3 old pence extra a week, and while pouring the tea, he decided to perform the cups and balls trick for his friend Derek Humby. He was in the middle of this basic trick when the formidable canteen lady, Mrs. Urine, intervened.
I can just imagine the scene. The clatter of the cups, the silence of the workers, and then the glare of the canteen lady.
Exactly. Mrs. Urine was absolutely not amused. She threatened to stop pouring tea entirely.
But he persisted.
He did, spurred on by the cheering and jeering of the rest of the workers. It became a standoff, escalating until a foreman had to intervene and literally march Tommy out of the canteen.
A complete fiasco?
A total fiasco.
And the sources mark this fiasco, this public, humiliating, yet ultimately celebrated failure, as the exact moment his comic agenda was set.
That's it. The idea of an act based purely on incompetence was born right there in the canteen.
And crucially, this is the pivot point. From this moment forward, his ineptitude was entirely deliberate.
Absolutely. Val Andrews, his friend and fellow magician, later confirmed that Cooper worked extremely hard to ensure that everything he touched would break or fail on command. Val said years of hard work and experience went into honing the perfect comic article.
So it wasn't genius because he was naturally clumsy?
No. It was genius because he was a technical master, making himself look clumsier than anyone else in history.
After the boat company debacle, Cooper's military service in the Royal Horse Guards provided him with a new, much bigger stage.
It did. He suffered a serious gunshot wound to the arm, losing his A1 rating, but he gained invaluable performance experience in Army concert parties.
And the war didn't just provide a stage, the rough and ready forces environment was the perfect setting for developing his initial act.
It was. It was loud, demanding, and forgiving of roughness. And it's interesting, while he engaged heavily in Mickey-taking and audience participation here, he almost entirely dispensed with it in later years.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a sign that he was constantly refining his act, moving away from potentially dubious spectator sport toward controlled self-destruction.
And the military also provided the source for one of his famous stage routines, which stemmed from an incident where he was lucky not to be court-martialed.
Oh, the urban myth that became theatrical gold.
Exactly.
That's the classic sentry duty incident. Tommy dozed off, standing up, rifle in hand. And when the sergeant and orderly officer approached to catch him sleeping on duty, he woke up just in time, thought fast, opened his eyes fully, and just shouted.
Amen.
Amen.
Why amen? It's so random.
It's such an utterly baffling, unexpected word in that context, as if he'd been praying, that it completely discombobulated the officers.
And nothing was said.
Nothing was said. It averted a court-martial. And this became a regular routine in his stage act, playing his dozy self and the fierce sergeant major in mimed counterpoint.
So he took a moment of personal, career-ending failure and turned it into a reliable source of laughter.
Which is really the story of his career. And more importantly, he found love during his service. He met Gwen Hilliard, later known as Dove, a civilian entertainer, on a troop ship traveling from Port Said to Alexandria.
And she was instantly struck by him.
She really was. She remembered seeing this massive man in battle dress and just being mesmerized by his magnificent physique. She told herself immediately, this man's got star talent, and she hadn't even seen him perform properly yet.
Wow.
They reconnected in Cairo, and when she asked him for his sheet music, the dots, he gave the classic carefree Cooper instruction, just play the first few bars of the Sheik of Araby.
That is pure show business confidence, bordering on laziness right there.
It is.
Yeah.
And upon his return to England, he started sending these trite but touching letters to Gwen. But his professional trajectory was really guided by her extremely strong editorial hand.
Gwen was absolutely indispensable then, not just for moral support, but as a professional anchor.
Totally. She was the one who insisted he drop the idea of a double act, telling him pragmatically, you've got no one to fall out with but yourself.
That's brilliant. She understood his chaotic energy needed a single focus.
She did. And she constantly endorsed playing magic for laughs, recognizing where his accidental genius lay.
Her practical guidance even extended to finances, trying to counteract his ingrained thrift. She insisted his 48 pounds of demob pay, which was a substantial sum then, be spent on a decent Savile Row suit and a Crombie camel hair coat,
making him, in his own words, the best-dressed out-of-work act in London.
That tenacity was crucial during his grinding hustle phase, which he needed to survive while waiting for his break. And money was scarce, so he turned to market scams to supplement his income.
This is where the comedy of his real life just spills over again.
So before achieving stardom, he and his cohorts engaged in hustles like selling the non-functional radio estabulator.
Exactly. Which was essentially a cardboard tube with wires sold for half a crown, advertised as an interference suppressor designed to improve radio reception.
And his brother David would act as the shill to start the buying frenzy.
Right, they'd sell dozens before flaying the market.
Right. And the sources document the even sketchier horse racing tipping swindle, the back of the nut.
Yes, he and Dennis Rollins sold guaranteed tips for 2 shillings. The scam was designed to be untraceable, but it led to a moment of perfect, immediate comeuppance.
It did. Shortly after securing his first small TV presence, he was on a train, still basking in his newfound status, when he was confronted by a disgruntled worker who recognized him from his market days.
And the worker just pointed at Cooper and said, "Why, you're that bastard who sold me that tip."
So how did the King of Chaos handle being exposed?
Tommy instantly turned into a quivering wreck, terrified of the confrontation, saved only by the slam of the train door as the worker was forced off the carriage.
So even his scams were laced with chaos and extreme vulnerability.
His early life was just a constant hustle, trying to make money and trying to avoid getting caught doing so.
His first professional steps weren't even as the star, but as a stooge. He worked for Harry Tate Jr., playing the tall, gormless caddy with a wheel on a stick, all for a paltry 2 pounds, 10 shillings a wink.
A vital apprenticeship in physical comedy and timing.
It was. But the real breakthrough, the moment the public saw the blueprint, that came in 1951. He replaced Michael Bentine in the prestigious Fallais Bergère Review at the London Hippodrome.
And the critics were stunned. The Daily Telegraph critic wrote that the best individual turn was provided by Tommy Cooper as a hopelessly incompetent magician.
And then came the killer line.
I have never before seen anybody do as little as Mr. Cooper and yet be so terribly funny.
The public had officially met the incompetent master. This is where we delve into the core engine of his talent, the sheer painful skill needed to achieve the perfect illusion of failure. For Cooper, magic wasn't merely a job, it was a lifelong obsession.
It went way beyond professional necessity.
His level of dedication highlights the intense irony of his act. The sources describe him acting like a child transformed in magic shops, particularly at Davenport's in London, just glowing with sheer, unadulterated joy.
He was completely consumed by it.
And the details of his practice are incredible. He practiced card tricks on the lavatory.
He did. And he often carried up to 17 bags and cases of props on tour. This wasn't someone who just picked up props for a show. He was hauling his entire private kingdom around the world with him.
Exactly. He would commandeer hotel sitting rooms as practice rooms, saying, I love what I'm doing, so when I try something new and it goes well, that's a great tonic for me.
He used magic as his private, calming hobby. A world of perfect control away from the chaos of his professional and personal life.
His relationship with the magic world confirms this obsession. Harry Stanley of Unique Magic heavily featured Cooper's endorsement in his catalogs. But the most revealing stories, for me, come from Edwin Hooper of Supreme Magic Company.
Ah, yes. When Hooper sent a new catalog, Cooper's instruction almost invariably was, send one of each.
One of each.
Hooper had to become his de facto editor. He sometimes had to warn him off buying and performing overly complex tricks, fearing Cooper might ruin them on live television, and thereby curtail future sales of those specific items to other magicians.
But Cooper's acquisitive tendencies never clouded his editorial judgment. The majority of his purchases were never performed in public.
No, he knew which simple, ancient tricks were ripe for the comedy of destruction.
And his mastery allowed him to truly subvert expectations. The source emphasizes that his skill in ruining his act was amazing.
He was capable of genuine, sophisticated skill, yet he would make a silk handkerchief disappear using the most elementary method possible, one that had been exposed thousands of times in books and yet received wild applause.
Because of his sheer, captivating, bewildered presentation, the trick wasn't the magic.
The trick was Cooper.
Now, let's consider the architecture of his comic chaos on stage. His table wasn't just a prop holder, it resembled a surreal landscape.
You had props for playing with, props for drop, I'm not afraid of work, and props for questioning. I don't know what that's for.
It was an external manifestation of his own cluttered, anxious mind. What stands out are the props that became symbols of his pain. Detail those.
Well, you have the classic cone and ball, with which he managed to repeatedly knock himself into a semi-dazed condition.
Right.
The wilting flower in a pot that he would stare at in genuine confusion. The absurdity of the jack-in-the-box head emerging from the rubbish bin.
And perhaps the most iconic simple prop, the trick teacup.
Sliced perfectly in half for those moments when he wanted just half a cup of tea, only to discover the contents spilling everywhere.
But the key to his delivery, what made the chaos so watchable, was the absolute seriousness and sincerity that hallmarked his comedy.
Absolutely. He was painstaking in rehearsal, ensuring that once a piece of business was deemed correct, like the precision of his clumsiness, it remained perfectly that way always.
Bob Monkhouse noted that this surgical precision gave the lie to the apparent spontaneous clumsiness.
He wasn't improvising his failure, he was performing it.
And this serious control allowed him to engage in the absolute subversion of comedic conventions. He was adept at getting the basic business of being funny wrong.
He defied the #1 rule of comedy. Don't repeat yourself, and repeat simple gags like the cone and ball catch multiple times, yet secure bigger laughs each subsequent time because the failure felt deeper.
And he would also distract himself constantly by talking to people in the wings, asking, what do you mean come off? If only just come on.
That constant distraction, this self-referential failure, was a perfectly calculated act designed to keep the audience in a state of delighted confusion.
His material itself presents a final paradox. Cooper was an avid consumer of jokes, embracing joke book culture.
Right. He was heavily influenced by figures like Bob Hope, but also by Milton Berle, who famously rose to fame on the back of others' material, a fact celebrated in the film, Always Leave Them Laughing.
He was a collector, a hoarder of material. But he transformed these borrowed jokes entirely through his distinctive delivery and, crucially, his timing.
Let's take the Stradivarius Rembrandt joke, which he acquired from Norkitti. He tells the story of two famous brothers, one a painter, Rembrandt, the other a violinist, Stradivarius. The punchline is, unfortunately, the painter was Rembrandt and the violinist was Stradivarius.
And the laugh comes where?
It comes on the pronounced, agonizing pause after the word unfortunately. The audience knows the punchline is coming, but they have to wait for the specific Cooper timing, the slight head wobble, the grimace, before the punchline drops.
It's a masterful use of tension.
It is.
Or the police constable sugar in the suitcase joke. This material was ancient, originally written by Fred Allen for a 1924 Broadway review.
Yeah, the joke where the officer asks, what's in the bags? One has sugar for his tea, the other has sugar for his coffee. And the officer hits him with his truncheon, shouting, there's a lump for your cocoa.
The material might be old, but Cooper delivered it with the full weight of physical consequence, making it land hard every time.
And he also had this particular, perhaps ironic fascination with doctor jokes, given his own health issues.
Doctor, I feel like a pair of curtains.
Then pull yourself together. That perfect pun was just elevated by his sheer physical presence.
Let's discuss one of his most iconic extended pieces of physical comedy. The waiter sketch, often called the Smash Room sketch.
Oh, yeah. This piece just epitomizes the theme of controlled destruction. The material describes a smart restaurant presided over by Victor Spinetti, and the unique element of the restaurant is a special back room, the Smash Room.
Right, where waiters can go to vent their frustration by smashing crockery out of the gaze of troublesome customers.
And Cooper, playing the waiter, uses this room to hilarious effect. He's constantly crossing the line between fawning politeness toward the diners 1 second and then maniacal rage in the back room the next, followed by a sudden calm return to the table.
And the chaos just spirals.
It does. He gets hopelessly confused about which room he's in, smashing a tureen over a customer's head because he mistakenly thought he was in the Smash Room. He ends up twice as nasty, a display of destruction worthy of Laurel and Hardy at their most gloriously destructive.
It must have required phenomenal energy and, again, precise timing to avoid actually hurting anyone.
Absolutely. Total, calculated chaos.
We have to address the complexities and the darkness behind the curtain because the persona of the lovable buffoon, it masked significant inner chaos.
He did. Miff Ferry, a former musician and bandleader, was an absolutely essential component of Cooper's career, but the sources described their relationship as deeply acrimonious.
The management friction was constant.
And driven largely by Cooper's unpredictable nature and, fundamentally, his paranoid frugality. Miff's job was administrative chaos management. His records are full of chaotic notes from Cooper like, does not know where rehearsal is, and he hasn't opened my letter yet.
And the friction wasn't just administrative, it was financial. The sources detail a moment of extreme tension ahead of the 1954 Las Vegas trip.
Right. Cooper was deeply unhappy about paying Miff's expenses and tried to threaten his manager's position entirely.
He went so far as to withhold commission, forcing Miff to initiate legal proceedings in 1954 just to get paid.
He did. The commission was eventually paid, but the relationship was permanently defined by this financial tension.
And Miff's loyalty endured, though.
Because Cooper's particular collection of faults and foibles, the chaos, the drinking, the sudden bouts of mean-spiritedness, was too much for a new agent coming fresh to the scene to tolerate. Miff was the devil he knew.
This financial paranoia ties directly back to his ruthless opportunism and meanness, which, as we established, was a direct manifestation of the lasting thrift trait instilled by his mother.
Bobby Bernard described Cooper as a ruthless opportunist. He'd never pay for anything if he could find a way of getting you to give it to him.
And here's the legendary Bill Hall postcard story, which perfectly illustrates this transactional anxiety.
It's a great one. Hall, a caricaturist on the variety circuit, charged Cooper £3 for some publicity postcards. Cooper immediately tried to negotiate the price down.
Of course he did.
And Hall, a seasoned professional who knew Cooper's games, instantly countered.
What was his countermove?
Hall paused, looked at Tommy, and said, "I'm terribly sorry, Tommy. I've just realized I forgot to include a spurious charge for bromide paper."
Brilliant.
Cooper, faced with the possibility of a new, unknown, and potentially astronomical charge being added, immediately paid the original £3 with the speed of jet propulsion.
He preferred to pay the quoted price than haggle over a new, unquantifiable variable.
Exactly.
And the frugality extended into his social habits, particularly his drinking. He would never go straight to the bar in a pub.
No, he would wait in suspended animation until someone else volunteered to buy him a drink, responding with the private catchphrase. Oh, that's very kind.
He even kept his liquor under padlock and chain in dressing rooms.
To prevent anyone, including his staff, from taking a sip.
The ultimate confirmation of this financial secretiveness was revealed upon his death. A safe deposit box that Gwen knew little about was opened.
And it contained £36,000 in cash. Readies. And the temptation, as the source Riley puts it, is to believe that this represented all the money he had saved from all the drinks he never bought.
It was a physical testament to his lifelong paranoid thrift. And behind the laughter, Cooper was chronically unwell. He suffered from lumbago, sciatica, bronchitis, recurring heart issues.
He was a profound hypochondriac, too. He collected patent medicines and slimming pills, which he dangerously mixed with sleeping tablets and large quantities of alcohol.
And he stubbornly refused to adjust his erratic lifestyle, often staying up late, practicing magic tricks.
And the personal demons took a massive toll on his marriage to Gwen, his dove. She was incredibly long-suffering, sometimes woken in the early hours to cook his favorite meals.
The anecdote involving Freddie Starr is famous.
Right. Cooper threatened, she's fucking gonna be if the soup's cold, if his soup wasn't piping hot immediately.
And despite his genuine love and dependence on her, he was verbally abusive and occasionally violent when drunk.
Gwen repeatedly threatened legal separation. And to tell the papers, though she always relented, she often publicly joked about his failings to the press, projecting this picture of domestic bliss, saying he was the nicest, kindest, and most awkward man in the world.
She was his public relations machine, protecting his image, even at the cost of her own suffering.
And the sources also confirm his long-standing relationship with Mary Kay, his assistant. She provided the emotional support and companionship he craved on the road.
She traveled with a camping stove and kitchen utensils, sometimes cooking him steak at 3 a.m. in his dressing room.
And his own son, Thomas, confided to Mary that if she ever left his father, it will be the death of him. Mary Kay provided the stability he demanded, but couldn't create himself.
And even amidst this genuine drama, farce always followed. There's the farcical hotel bill mix-up. Gwen angrily confronted him with a hotel bill addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Cooper, accusing him of hiding an affair.
And Tommy's quick thinking just kicked in. He successfully pranked her by calling the hotel manager from a phone box, apologizing profusely for the billing error, claiming he had been on his own for the entirety of the stay.
And Gwen confirmed this by speaking to the manager, feeling terrible that she had accused her husband unjustly.
And she concluded, not about the affair, but about the billing. It was just like him not to pay it.
He managed to pivot from an accusation of infidelity to a confirmation of his frugality. Incredible. In his later career, Cooper occupied this really unique space. Unlike many contemporaries who frantically tried to maintain the illusion of youth, Cooper was allowed to grow old by his public.
His slumping shoulders, his decelerating pace, his slightly slurred delivery. It only seemed to add to his melancholy, baffled comic attitude. His decline became part of the act.
However, the decline was real. The later TV shows, like the New London series in 1978, suffered from under-rehearsal and his worsening physical condition, leading to occasional poor reviews like unadulterated rubbish.
His timing slipped. The sources recall one instance where, misinterpreting a laugh as a prompt, he turned his back to the audience to check his flies, mistaking their reaction for an entirely different gag.
But despite the physical decline, his talent for pure physical comedy remained razor-sharp when he was properly directed.
Absolutely. His greatest physical accomplishment on film was The Plank in 1967, a silent film with Eric Sykes. This film capitalized purely on his physical knack for sidestepping life for comic effect.
The premise is so simple. Two builders, Sykes and Cooper, are moving a long wooden plank across London.
And the plank itself is a third character, constantly restricting their movements, causing public chaos, and knocking people over. The film's brilliance is demonstrated by the famous red paint gag, which requires meticulous physical control.
Describe that scene in detail. The precision of the physical humor is the whole point.
So Cooper gets a smear of bright red paint transposed onto his ear from the plank. When he trips and falls heavily, passersby immediately mistake the paint for blood.
Right, they rush to his aid.
They do. offering him amenities, water, tea, a cigarette, and cushioning his head with their coats. He's treated like a victim of trauma. But when they realize the blood is just paint that won't shift with their frantic wiping,
They abruptly withdraw all the amenities.
the coats, the water, the cigarette, letting his head crunch unceremoniously against the hard pavement.
The timing of the sudden withdrawal of sympathy and the sound of his head hitting the ground is the punchline. It's brutal, sudden, and perfectly executed physical comedy.
It is the ultimate display of a perfect physical shock gag, requiring a master collaborator like Sykes to orchestrate the chaos. It shows that even near the end of his career, when his live work was slipping, he still commanded a tremendous controlled physical vocabulary.
This all leads to the unscripted finale, April 15th, 1984. He was performing at the peak of his prestige, performing on a live television show, but was physically compromised.
He'd recently been on a final holiday in Las Palmas, banished from Las Vegas by Gwen, and had just taped a cover song with prophetic irony. Just enough to keep me hanging on.
He was appearing on the live show, Live from Her Majesty's, introduced lovingly by Jimmy Tarbuck. Tommy was seated on a stool due to his bad legs, attempting a simple cloak and sword routine. And then, at 9:20 p.m.,
The collapse.
and this is the ultimate act of cognitive dissonance for the audience. Accustomed to his extreme physical gags and chaos, they could not stop laughing, believing the collapse to be part of the act.
The irony is chilling. The radio microphone he was wearing only enhanced the sound of his death rattle, which was interpreted by the audience as his distinctive rasping cough-cum-guffaw, a common noise in his act.
They were literally laughing at the sound of his death.
Literally. Backstage, the confusion was immediate and profound. Producer David Bell turned to Cooper's son, Thomas, who was working as a stagehand, and asked, "Is that a joke?"
And the son, knowing his father's body and ailments, replied, "No, my dad has a bad back and wouldn't be able to do that." And then, "This is for real."
In a surreal moment of theater history, the show had to go on. The stage crew had to perform the next acts in front of the front curtain, which was made difficult by the bulge in the curtain caused by Tommy's body in the center of the stage.
The comedy was forced to continue literally around his death.
It was.
And an ironic final detail that speaks volumes about his private struggles was discovered shortly afterward. Tarbuck's manager, Peter Pritchard, found the carrier bag Tommy had asked him to look after. What did it contain?
It contained several cans of Caliber, an alcohol-free lager.
Which suggests that he was, at least in that final hour, attempting to stay sober, attempting to regain control over his chaotic life, only for his body to fail him in the most public and ironic way imaginable.
Yeah.
The legacy, though, it transcends the tragedy and the personal chaos. His reputation has survived more potently than contemporaries, quietly entering British folklore, cementing his place in the national consciousness. He consistently ranked highly in polls as the greatest British comic, years after his death. And this enduring legacy is summarized beautifully by those who knew him, recognizing the immense contradictions.
He was a deeply spiritual man who believed in reincarnation, pondering where the mind and all that we've learned goes after death.
But perhaps the most concise assessment comes from Bobby Bernard, capturing the complexity of the beloved, troubled genius. He was a terrible sod, but he was my friend.
So, bringing this deep dive full circle, Tommy Cooper was a comedian who weaponized his lifelong obsession with magic, using decades of rigorous technical mastery to create the perfect illusion of failure.
He desperately needed the structure of traditional comedy, the jokes, the acts, the timing to subvert it, and he desperately needed the love of his audience to endure the chaos of his own making, both on stage and off.
The ultimate paradox lies in his final, unscripted moment. Considering his serious belief in reincarnation and the fact that his entire genius was dedicated to making the impossible seem accidental, what if the perfect execution of his final collapse, the way it created confusion, horror, and laughter simultaneously, embodying the entire human condition, was in fact his greatest, most meticulously timed trick of all?
It was the single biggest laugh of his career, achieved at the ultimate cost.
It was.
And that raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over. If Tommy Cooper had managed to pull himself together backstage and caught sight of the final curtain call on a monitor, seeing the chaos and the sheer confused horror that followed, what do you think his reaction would have been after a lifetime spent agonizing over whether he was funny enough?
Would he have muttered those words he said to his producer after one of his last great performances, exhausted and drenched in sweat, but needing reassurance?
I didn't let you down, did I? Just like that.